What's up, everybody? Happy Halloween. Samhain. And what is it today? It's Monday, right? Monday, 31st of October. Coming in at 10:09 p.m. Checking out an amazingly beautiful night. Seeing our waxing crescent still, 47.5%, almost 50%. Sharp moon tonight. Hopping in the chat, say what's up to Red Rum, Marky Rizzo, Genghis Khan, what's going on? Nice to see you, fam. Just mellow evening, handing out some candy to the neighbors. And now it's time to chill with our moon. It was a long day of studying and watching videos, watching a lot of Sky Scholar today, and some of the debunking versus debunking videos. Really just a kind of an intense barrage of negative commenters on Sky Scholar's last couple of videos. And I love seeing Steve Crothers kind of tackle it one at a time. But it's just so silly, all of it together. I was thinking just like investing time in reading it and then arguing with people who really don't want to see science progress at all. Pretty lame. But then I thought at the same time, the people who denounce Sky Scholar are basically bringing new viewers to the channel, and they can make up their own minds when they hear his videos. What's going on, Esoteric Gold? Good to see you. Sounds good. Shopping for a couple tools for my Halloween. All right, I hear ya. Red Rum throws in the joke, what happened to the cannibal who showed up late to Halloween dinner? They gave him a cold shoulder. The cold shoulder. Sorry, I ruined it. They gave him the cold shoulder. That's a good one. All right, y'all. I'm going to get my drink ready. I wanted to set up quickly because the moon's actually moving. And I want to make sure we get some crispy details tonight. We also got Saturn and Jupiter in tow. I have a lot to talk about, but tonight could just be a music and chill stream. I don't know. I was all pumped earlier, and then I had a mellow evening and thought about it, and I'm like, I'm not gonna get the main thing is to just keep the vibes high, keep moving forward, and share some awesome views of space with my friends. So let's do that. Taking song requests, but let's do some stuff from Vibration Theater here. I'll be back in a few. All right. These are some good jokes. Keep them coming, folks. I see Nada25 in there. Welcome to the channel. I see Astralis. A good Halloween to you. I love all these jokes in the chat. Dennis Humble, what's going on? Freaking love this channel. I appreciate you. Hope everybody's doing great tonight. I'm a little bit, I don't want to say low energy, I just might sound low energy, but it's just because I'm real chill right now, just been sitting on the porch for a few hours, so ran upstairs to do my, to set up the scope just in time to get this crispy mispy moon. You can see the little nub at the very bottom too, really cool. Incredible features across, it's 47.5%. Right before 50, our half cookie moon. Got Serenity and Tranquility, Fecunditatis, Mare Crisium at the bottom, nice and hexagonal, Mare Nectaris, and a whole row of craters. The thing is to keep everything at the same level so we can see all the detail. I had to dim it a bit, so we're not seeing all the nice sharpness of the Terminator line, but this is the more round off shot. Get a Red Bull. I need to go grab some coffee, actually. A little more coffee should be good. Because I had so much coffee already, but I'm already crashing. Maybe I should get a beer or something. More Jello. Giggity red. Alright, let's see. Dark chocolate sounds good. I think I have some chocolate as well. So yeah, I rotated the camera so we can see more of the moon at once. Let's keep going with this shot. A couple more songs and then maybe some zoomed in crater stuff. And I actually checked out the Mars crater, Mars impact recently that I think NGC was referencing yesterday, where where Insight, I think, took photos of a site, and then the next day it saw an impact crater. Quite interesting. I think it does actually show that you can see impact craters. And in fact, I think an interesting part of it is that it's an impactor coming from the side, or whatever it may have been, because they didn't actually catch the impactor, they just saw the crater remains. But the crater itself actually had corners. So it's interesting. I mean, it's sort of what I was saying, where like the idea of electric arcing creating large craters is definitely a possibility. But even if they were impact related, you still see pentagons, hexagons, and fundamental geometry in impact or electric arcs or volcanoes. It's pretty much a signature of our construct, of our reality, to see these polygonal shapes in nature. I think that's the more important point here. Wow, I see Frederick Fogg coming in. Good evening to you. I hope you're well. I see Kimmy. Well, hallow, you lunatics. Good to see you. More Jello says, I found the song you sang, the More Jello song, from a stream a long time ago. You know what I was thinking? I find those things too. NGC actually finds a bunch of these old ones, and they're the chat room songs, and Kimmy too. It would be cool to see. I say Kimmy, and Kimmy just shows up. What's going on, Kimmy? So cool. Roro Shaggy. Raggy. What's up, D Zerda? What's going on? Nice to see you. So yeah, I was thinking about going back and kind of cropping some of these little clips from the old shows and creating a compilation of all the different live songs and the versions of the live songs. But it's a huge undertaking, to be honest, but I'm going to do it one day, I promise. But yeah, if you have it, actually just message me and link it so I can put it in a playlist. Oh, you posted on your channel. Okay, that's fine. All good. Hey, you. All right. So like I said, tonight could be a lot of chat or it could be a lot of tunes. So y'all tell me. I don't know, like yesterday I feel like I spoke a lot and maybe I was just droning on and on and on about the same old thing. I was watching, like I said earlier, Sky Scholar today, his re-debunking of the professor. And man, I was listening to those little clips. I've like never really watched any of those videos on these mainstream channels. I mean, I know what I see the thumbnails obviously, but I don't really give them any of my attention. However, him debunking it, you have the clips of him in the video, and gosh, it was like toxic to hear that kind of intonation and aggression when it comes to these topics. But Dr. Robitaille did an amazing job. But I also think, like, man, it's a challenge, because there's so much dogma in academia and stonewalling and name calling and aggression when it comes to these principles that we have in science. So I was feeling pretty gung-ho about coming live tonight and talking about it, and then I thought about it. I'm like, the main thing is to stay with the high vibration and don't let it shake us. And also realize that, like, a video like that, even trying to so-called debunk the Sky Scholar, actually got him a ton of views and a ton of followers, because people are smart enough to make up their own mind, or at least some people are smart enough to make up their own mind. So they listen to Pierre Marie Robitaille and they can figure it out. So, yeah. What else is going on? I haven't watched much else today. Mostly was trying to relax and keep my back unsore so that I can do these shows without getting too tired. Let's get some tunes going here for the Hallows. This one's called Fine Fixer.
See
All right, hopping in here to say what's up to Mary. Mary, how are you? Great to see you, picking up where we left off yesterday. I guess I'm not sure, maybe I missed your comment yesterday. I'm sorry to everybody if you feel like I missed your comment. It's not because I'm intentionally missing it. It's because I have a tough time sometimes seeing things while doing the show. So Mary says, actually, I didn't really care for Coco. Too much Disney in it. Yeah, that's sort of what I was saying. I think it's a little bit. I mean, they used to make shows that kind of were more for adults, I think, and now they kind of pretend to make things for adults, but it's very childish. I think some of the topics are great. Don't get me wrong. It's like Inside Out, for example, or even Coco, but I think the approach is a little too dumbed down. But you can't have it all. The graphics are just so much better, and so you wonder what's going to take a hit if you improve one area of a thing. Did I miss anybody coming into the chat? Let's see. Frederick Fogg asked me a great question. May as well repeat it here. It says, if I could get time on any telescope in the world, which one would it be? What would I observe? And so I've been to Hawaii before, up to Mauna Kea, where they have the Subaru, the Keck, and a bunch of those huge domes that you typically see in the fly-arounds. And so probably one of those, probably the Keck Observatory or the Mount Wilson Observatory. And what I would observe, I mentioned in the chat, probably Jupiter or Saturn first. Mostly because the amount of detail that you can get with a giant telescope like that is really staggering, especially if you're getting live imaging, which I imagine that you can do. And I think, is it the Keck or the Subaru? One of them has adaptive optics, so you can really get the aberration down to a minimum, and on a good night you could probably see absolutely incredible close-up detail of Jupiter and take time lapses of the bands moving across. See some of the moons closer up. And then Saturn, of course, same sort of thing. Saturn is such a particular beast because when you get past the level of magnification, it just really jumps in detail. We get to see it in a limited capacity from 8 to 11-inch scopes. At the 14-inch up until 22-inch and then beyond, you start getting crazy detail from Saturn. So probably Jupiter, Saturn, then the moon. Because I think we've gotten a ton of amazing shots from the moon, so if you really want to see a 16, 20, 30-inch shot of the moon, you can actually find that online, pretty much of all the great features. And then maybe after that, probably try and get Neptune and Uranus, which take a particular type of, you need to track them and find them and see what kind of detail you can get, because that would be one of those things that's not very often viewed or at least recorded. I would say get some 4K shots of Neptune. Kimmy says, what's the blue orb bottom of the crater to the right? Blue orb. I think I missed it. Let's get back up there. Yeah, so I was looking at this. It looked like a face. I thought maybe I'll get the scribbling tools out and we can look at this because it looks like Castle Grayskull going on. And then we'll get back to the tunes, just a little bit of scribbly. See if that still works. Where's my thing? Why is that not coming up? All right, let me just put a song while I figure this out. Don't you try. vibrational mental field zone. Your mind is the moon, obey the call. A heart now hears the sun. Someday you're gone. We live in fascination of our heartbeats. Never aboard, never aboard, never aboard. Why don't you try? Oh, don't you try? Somewhere so far beyond, so slow it down. My friends, I know it's hard sometimes, and we can make it. Try. Why don't you try? Your mind is the moon, obey the call. A heart now hears the sun. Someday you're gone. We live in fascination of our heartbeats. Never aboard, never aboard, never aboard. Why don't you try? Don't you try? All right. Hopping in to say what's up to Henry Dorn. What's going on? Welcome. And Allison Winterland. Nice to see you. So yeah, just had to adjust a little bit. You saw the scribble. Right now zoomed in on Theophilus, Cyrillus, and Katharina, a really interesting crater chain. You see Theophilus has the very cool like Christmas tree kind of structure in the middle, the central peaks. And then Cyrillus has a double peak and a little craterlet, and Katharina is kind of this interesting overlap, if you can make it out on the right. So what I might do here, just thinking out loud, is because I'd like to get us a little bit more detail, and that means I want to remove one of the lenses, but I also want to make sure that everyone's seen the wide shot. So, awesome Morgello, thanks for sending that over. I'll take a look at that after the show. So, yeah, so let's zoom out a little bit. Let's take a look at the both halves of the moon, and then I'm going to switch up the lens and we'll do the same shot but zoomed in. Like I said, taking some requests tonight if you have a song that you want to hear. This one is Why Am I, and then going into Feel For You, and play with some views over here of the moon. Alright, just a quick thing here because the detail is kind of crazy. So if you see at the absolute 6 o'clock position of the moon, at the, well, I guess the 5:30, 5 o'clock is Mare Crisium. Actually, let me just scribble it so I can, just I feel like this is a very good view and I want to make sure I point it out. So let's say this is Mare Crisium, right? We got our nice hexagonal shape, Proclus, Tranquility, Serenity, Fecundity, Nectaris, and Frigoris going up there, right? But this area right here, right around here, this is Mare Undarum and Mare Marginis. But then this region, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. This region right here is what I'm talking about. So this is Smithy. It's like a pyroclastic flow. It's probably something, it looks probably something like Mare Crisium, but we're seeing it from the side. So I just want to point that out if you're looking at something. That's why you got the little nubs on it. Wait, can I push this down a bit? I guess I can. There we go. Oh, the scroll bars work. Is that right? There we go, this area right here. Alright, so pay attention to that. I'm going to zoom into it before we switch the lens, or after I switch the lens, rather. Alright, back to the tunes.
voices just leaving. I've been there, I see shit. Our oscillators the weirdest, nobody can hear it. Sometimes we just feel it, or they just stare underneath it. Our radio just go. Fly it up till the bubbles pop. That's a power now. That's a power now. That's a power now. That's a power now. Our radio just go. Fly it up till the bubbles pop. That's a power now. That's a power now. That's a power now. That's a power now. Do you know why I've been beaten from the heart? I know, no lie. I've been thinking about you all night. Why? No why. I've been waiting for your white light. No why. I've been thinking that you should be mine. So call me up, and let's get down, 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 down. So call me up, and let's get down, 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 down. Oh, you send me messages across the cosmic network, and you send me pictures from across the astral plane, and you send me cryptic kisses across the matching network. So call me up, and let's get down, 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 down. So call me up, and let's get down, 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 Je t'attends, mon amour incestuel, ainsi la même que la même semaine, agitant la éternelle, avec pendant son billet. Je suis la même que ton avant-négligé chaque jour. Je t'attends, mon amour, avec les mecs sans agrévé. Et c'est l'amour magnétique, c'est l'amour magnétique, c'est mon amour magnifique. Cool on it, know what
right, that was a little will-powered. Let's hop in here, talk a little bit about some of these craters, just because I feel compelled to. What's going on? Downscale, welcome to hang out with us on the live stream. Nice to see you. Thanks for the kind comments. Yo Q, I see you in there. What's going on? Nice to see you. Thanks for all the great comments, everybody. Just wanted to say what's up to Shockwave, of course. Hope you're doing better and well, staying well. So yeah, I want to talk just a bit about, because I mentioned it earlier, the Mars impact that they just caught recently on the InSight craft. So a picture of actual, like, the surface of Mars, I mean, if you believe it, surface of Mars, and then an impactor and the remnants of it. So you get the splatter and you get the ballistic impact. And it's actually really fascinating to see. Like, I love the electric arc idea of creating surface features, but I'm open to the fact that ballistic impact from meteorites could cause features as well. What it did remind me of, if we're looking at this this little craterlet in the middle of Serenity. So let me pull up my paint program a little bit. I can scribble it. So where is this? This back. So what is interesting to me, between, there's obviously the electric impact version, there's volcanism as well, where some of these features may have come from underneath the surface and grown outwards. And then you have the idea of impactors and the Great Bombardment to create all the different features on the moon. So electric arcing, if we have something like this coming down a streamer or a filament, right? Around the filament, you've got counter-rotating current flow. Like every filament in space, it has a sheath. This sheath encases the entire filament. And so you have current going up and current coming down. What's attached to the moon creating this? The most reasonable thing that I've heard, or one of the most logical things I've heard, is when Jeffrey Walensky, the champion of the stellar metamorphosis model, where stars become planets. Let's say Earth was a star at one point and captured the moon and had these electric filaments connecting the Earth and the moon a long time ago. So Earth had enough power and enough electric charge to actually create these patterns on the moon by really tethering the moon at a certain point in our history. And so it used to be, to me, in the original idea of electric universe, that potentially it was Mars or some other planet that actually the moon was connected to via filaments. And I'm trying to remember, there's this filament, potentially Mars, but I actually really think that maybe this is how the moon was captured by Earth via this giant tethering. So on the other side of the moon, not that we can say for sure because you can't take a picture of it, but from the pictures that have been taken of it, the backside is far different than the front side that we see with all the giant mare. And you imagine that if the moon was tethered and one side facing the Earth star, then Earth star is actually getting bombarded, because stars do have debris that gravitationally falls inwards or gets attracted by the Birkeland filament at the center, thus creating a bombardment where the moon would be in the way, but only the back of the moon. So that's how we could have two different types of surface features on the moon combined. So you have electric tethering, creating a lot of the bigger, more exact laser cut details. And then you have a mix of that where you have bombardment from the fact that the moon is tidally locked to Earth. That's just an idea, of course, but some of it makes sense to me. So I just want to point out one feature here. So this is Sea of Serenity and Posidonius crater, Posidonius. And I just want to outline this for a moment here. I don't know why I'm not seeing my cursor well, but there we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a septagon, and you got a micro craterlet in the middle. Yeah, what I want to say earlier is the Mars crater relief, that if you take a look at the picture, you'll see that it actually has 5 or 6 sides to it, even though it's a side-swiping impactor. or at least that's what they hypothesize. But the crater does leave a geometric shape, even though it was an impactor and probably not an electric arc on Mars recently. But yeah, so Posidonius, and then Sea of Serenity, you can kind of see this barrier between serenity and tranquility, and this is a very interesting feature, this very straight boundary layer between not only the actual shape of the mare, but also the defining line of the materials in the flats. Then you have this braided filament right here with the forked outlet. We saw this yesterday on the stream, but you can just want to outline it. This type of stuff is very hard to say that this is not electric current flow because it is a Lichtenberg pattern and it's literally imprinted on the surface of the moon. Now, does this come from underground, and do shapes like this end up being recursive because electricity is fundamentally the shape of things? I think there could be that type of correlation where I've come around to the fact that all the geometry, regardless of impact versus electric, is going to end up looking geometric because of the electrical structure. All right, let's see. So chicken before the egg. I don't know what we're talking about here, but more jealous as I miss my drum set. I have a drum set, but I can't set it up because it's so loud. And that sucks. But drums are fun. All right, so I just want to show a few features here. Let's continue with the tunes, but let me know if you have any thoughts on these shapes and features. I'll show you another area as well where we've got Rimahuygens, which is definitely little, they call them sinuous rills, but to me these are Lichtenberg flows. And not just to me, to other people as well. So right around this region, you can kind of see these cuts across surface features, almost like you see the direction of the flow of energy. Well, and this is the type of thing that you imagine that how are these kind of welded features showing up across larger areas? What were those? Were those bombardment, or were those land cracks? Was that tectonic shifting, or did we have some type of electrical feature or electrical interaction that moved across the surface creating these features? So Sea of Serenity showing some great relief tonight. Yeah, I keep forgetting the point that I tried to make, but the Mars crater, the recent one, reminds me a lot of Messier A and B, this kind of micro craterlet with a very sharp fall off. So let me see if I can find that real quick. It's in Fecunditatis. Shockwave says, the thunderbolts of the gods changed the previous humans into today's peoples. I think it is more ubiquitous, or I mean, that's true, but I think it's ubiquitous because electricity, everything emerges from electricity. So the complexity and fractalization of electricity definitely plays a role in the complexity of life. It's, I think, synonymous, or inherent, fundamentally the same thing. So yeah, getting over to Theophilus, and what other features can I talk about here? Anyway. Let me know what your thoughts are, and we'll keep going with the tunes. What's up next? Let's do some dark realms, some horns.
Can you feel like the way I can feel like the waves. I can feel.
All right. Hopping in here to say what's up to Mark Lindsay. Great to see you, friend. Hope you're having a great night. Lots of awesome comments here. Actually, I have a lot to say, but I'm also just vibing too, so just keep going here with some of the tunes. Showing Earthshine, got the camera exposure open and the ISO pumped high so we can see some of the Earthshine. The moon's already setting, so it's a little bit hazier than it could be. But either way, wonderful Terminator line coming in at 47 point something. What is it? 47.7 illumination, so almost 50. Still a crescent of sorts. And let's see. So you are now, that's awesome. No, I haven't done Jupiter or Saturn just yet. Jupiter is pretty high up there, but I think we could probably get some Jupy tonight. And Saturn is pretty easy, so I was just trying to get as much time with the moon as possible. I guess what was I talking about recently? Just some of these things about unified consciousness field and the fact that matter arises from consciousness, the fact that we ourselves created our bodies. These are some fundamental things that it's kind of interesting. Every time I do a show, I feel like I should repeat these things. They bear repeating. Things like the idea of memory being stored outside the body and the human body being an antenna for our field. So the structure of an atom, the structure of a planet, and its magnetic field is the same structure as a human and their biofield. So trauma, memories, information, the information that informs the shape of our body and our lives actually exists in the field around us. It might exist fractally as well inside the skull, but the idea that we interact with our field to co-create reality moment by moment as a magnetic moment or a dipole moment, creating a symmetrical instantiation of the echo of that, storing that memory of the created moment in the cloud, so to speak. This is really fundamental to everything, no matter what topic or model we're talking about. There's really the fact that we as observers of this reality actually affect all experiments, all theories, all models based on how we decide to look at them. It's really intrinsic. Am I outside? I'm basically at a door, so it's very loud here, and it's nice, clean nature, no sirens or nothing. But yeah, you can hear all of it. And I got a new mic, so it's probably picking up some of that as well. D. Zerda says, Wiki says our spine is an antenna. Yep, exactly. So our spine basically is outlining a filament. This filament, we can call it a string, or at least the way I look at it, if we combine all the models together, we come up with a consolidated, unified idea. Then a string in string theory is also an electrical filament or a wiggle or a Lichtenberg line. It's also a dendritic rill, or a dendritic filament or a sinuous rill. It's also a nerve if you look at your hand, and you'll see these patterns. It's basically a wiggly line, but this wiggly line is a braid. It's a coaxial wiggly line. That's what creates the wiggle, the fact that it's a twisted braid. And so that's what actually creates all the spin in the universe. Right now there's this huge debate about like what causes the spin in terms of the original, like a star, for example, or an active galactic nuclei, or a planet, and so on. What is actually the root or origin of the spin? And just a quick note on it is something that I had to research recently and trying to understand how this idea of clumping in an accretion disk, like protoplanetary disks, actually passes on original inertial momentum, axial inertial momentum, to a planet like Earth. So like, let's say Earth got created in a clumping event where matter in an accretion disk fused together to create an Earth-like planetoid, and on, creates the Earth that we have today. Where did Earth's spin come from, and where did Earth's magnetic field come from, and how does it persist? So that's a big question, or at least something that is talked about. Some people think it's settled, others are not so sure it's settled. But I think if we imagine the fact that quantum mechanics actually does indicate that nuclei and atoms basically have a funnel, a little micro wormhole, And this wormhole looks like the shape of an apple core. And this apple core looks like the shape of the human biofield. So it's really the negative space of a donut or a torus. I mean, we can call it a hypotrochoid or an hourglass shape or a pinched plasma tube. But in fact, in my opinion, I think they're all pretty much different words for the same thing. So torsion strings, magnetic ropes, strings, superstrings, fractal recursions of the same idea. I feel like all that's worth saying. Let's see. Reading some of these comments. So yes, our spine basically is an outline of a filament. It's like a root system, if you imagine. So there's these things called branching. Then there are leaders, right? There's a directionality, a vector to this branching. And then it's a series of wiggles because it's yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, 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 no, 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 yes, yes, yes. And if you let a point or a wave, rather, you observe this, you get this filamentary dendritic snaking action. Now, a really prime example of counter-rotation, and that is something that is really important to me and the idea of planetary formation, solar system understanding, is the counter-rotating bands of Jupiter, which I hope we're going to see tonight. Right now I'm sticking on the moon for a second, and the moon will set, and we'll check out Saturn first, and then hopefully I can aim it upwards and get us some Jupiter. It's been a while. So yeah, counter-rotating bands on Jupiter, on Saturn, and also the counter-rotating currents on Earth are a big part of this idea. So I think we can talk about magnetic fields of a planet and how those exist, but then we should also talk about what the aurora are. So aurora. Yeah, it should be back now, I think. Yeah, I think we should be back. Alright, so just reading some of the comments here. Again, not trying to... Actually, let me adjust the moon first before I continue talking. Everyone's like, what the hell are you doing blowing out the shot? Alright, still looking at this beauty. Yeah, so Shockwave was saying, let's see, look into Birkeland currents downscale. They're the reason the Earth has auroras. That's an excellent point. That's the whole thing. The idea is to look at the to look at the aurora on Earth. And if you want to, if you like the electric universe stuff, you can see Don Scott's presentation where he shows that not only are aurora ubiquitous to electrical funneling going into the pole, an electromagnetic pole of Earth, but also Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune, and I imagine Uranus as well. Not so much around Mars or the moon, but probably negligible, right? And this is the idea of active planets that have an electric or magnetic field, and the field is actually powered from the outside. Now, I know how people might interpret this, but this is just me talking, of course. There's always room for different ideas, but to me it makes a lot of sense that things are powered not only from the inside but the outside. So humans are powered from the outside as well. So we get electrical currents right through our system, and then we send electrical currents into the ground, which grounds us, so we're grounded. And our nervous system is an antenna, and it not only that, it actually sorts materials around each antenna stalk. And if you see a limb, a cross-section of a limb, it's basically like tree rings. And it's also like planetary cores. If you look at the cross-section of a planet, it's like the cross-section of a limb. It's like the cross-section of a tree. So if you follow that logic, we think about a giant field of unified consciousness, basically in pure intelligence, manifests in terms of plasma in dark mode and plasma in glow mode. And oscillation rippling through this unified field creates what we perceive as this duality, this idea of self and other. But at the very substantive core of everything is really a unified conscious field where we're pretty much the same energy flowing through all these systems. But the root systems themselves are, rife in terms of evidence. We can see them all over not only the planets, but our bodies. And not to lose my train of thought here, but more so about the aurora on Jupiter. Therefore, if Jupiter has aurora and we've deciphered aurora on the Earth, then we can look and compare and contrast and come up with some conclusions here. That's an idea. So maybe taking some of the Jupiter data and actually deciphering it as opposed to just doing perpetual science on it, because I feel like there's this implication in mainstream media that there's always a lot more science to do. We can never really find the answer. But auroras are electrical events, and they are found at Jupiter, and therefore Jupiter has electrical current flow. That's really just simple. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Internet just literally dropped to 0 for a second there, and everything went dark. So why this makes sense is because the universe is completely connected through wires, and these wires power each other, and this is how we interact, not only optically, but audibly, and our senses are essentially like the tips of our fingers are fractal antennas. We don't really ever touch anything on the quantum scale anyway. So yeah, I think it's important to note when I say Birkeland current is flow. And I had a good discussion where somebody corrected me on this. I don't mean to make it, it's not a representation for filaments, like an actual lightning bolt looks like a filament. But a Birkeland current is the current flow. It's like the sheath around the filament. So it's electrical filaments kind of going, braided filaments, like root systems going through the poles. And then around it, you see counter-rotating rings of energy. But on Jupiter, for example, the actual matter of Jupiter, the helium and hydrogen, methane on the outer, and then as you get closer and closer to the center, materials become more and more dense. And this is because at the very center of it, you have a plasmoid. And this plasmoid is the reason for this idea of gravitationally collapsing. But the spin comes from the twisting of the actual filaments going through this wormhole, or this hourglass shape, through the center of objects, all objects, from a hydrogen atom to a planet to a person's chakra to an entire human collection of chakra points. This shape is ubiquitous, and I'll shut up here in a second, but just quickly tie it all together. We have quantum tubules, so we have these little wormholes where so quantum entanglement, for example, two particles at opposite ends of the galaxy create a quantum tunnel, like a wiggling Lichtenberg line of sight. And then the energy from both of them, the oscillation or radiation from our eyes and the object, come to meet through this quantum tunnel. And this must happen at all scales, is the rational postulate here. And why wouldn't we have tunnels connecting everything? And when things try and react with one another, they send signals through these tunnels. These tunnels end up lighting up, and that's how we have luminous matter against dark matter. The dark energy is the process by which luminous matter is converted, or dark matter is converted into luminous matter. And I don't think it really has to be more complicated than that. But I think it's important to finish up my thoughts from yesterday, which were commenting on I think it's Michael Armstrong's video about the Big Bang never made sense, and these ideas that string theory never made sense and the Big Bang never made sense, these huge throw away the baby with the bathwater ideas, where I feel it's important to take a measured approach here and potentially try and augment some of the larger ideas with interconnected universe, an electric universe, and a universe emergent from consciousness. So if you add that, then you get a prior state to the universe via the Big Bang. And if you look at the Big Bang and you apply the structure of the universe, then you get a symmetrical or an omnidirectional explosion, which in fact the Big Bang, if you look at the diagram and you extend the diagram in all directions, which is what happens when you create a bubble, then the Big Bang actually looks like a planet itself. It looks like an atom with an arrangement of shells. So it would make sense that maybe the Big Bang as a unique fiat lux event where like nothing existed and then something existed, and pointing to seconds after the Big Bang or exactly how old the Big Bang was, maybe is a futile or illogical line of research. To many people, to many it's the absolute ultimate sacred dogma. But in my opinion, I think if we imagine that there might have been an infinite number of Big Bangs from a unified field of consciousness, dark mode plasma, light mode plasma is the universe that was created, and out of all these Big Bangs, or these pops of bubbles, our universe happened to be the one that survived, which fractally, recursively happens on Earth with all species and all things. You try a bunch of things, one of them works. You try a bunch of people, and some of them work. And so you try a bunch of universes, and one of them, the one we live in right now, happens to work. So it's very important, at least to me, in terms of alternative science, that we augment and find a middle ground between evolving theories and not just saying, here's a new idea, therefore every old idea is wrong. I'm not sure that's the best approach. I see Downscale and Shockwave getting into it. Hey y'all, don't get too crazy up in here. Still going to keep the high vibes. Anybody else have any thoughts on what I'm saying? Yeah, so we got our moon here. I think it's probably time to go check out some Saturn. I've chatted enough, but if you have any thoughts on what I'm saying, please hit me up in there. Anything else that I missed? D. Zerta says the pineal is supposed to be the transducer. So, yeah, the pineal gland and all the human chakras, if we look at them as knotted plasmoids, as twisted filaments, these are where the energy gravitationally collapses into, and the energy being the etheric plasma turning into different types of elements and complex matter, and also expressing itself via absorption and emission. So we create and we store, and we create and we store, and then we pop. Humans have a golden life, a golden age, and apples have a golden age, and Earth has a golden age, and universes likely have a golden age. A beginning, a middle, and an end, but continuous over the course of a frequency of a wave. Cybercelly, what's going on? What I find discounts the Big Bang is all about an entropy dead end expansion event, whereas nature is totally antiposed to that. That's a great point. I appreciate it. So, like I was saying, so there's this idea of the Big Bang being a unique event that, well, because it's two different things, right? Big Bang from standard cosmology is interpreted one way, and Big Bang cosmology from a quantum mechanics standpoint, superstring theory, is looked at very differently, because in superstring theory, years ago I would have said, oh, string theory is going nowhere, there's no point to it. But they've basically figured out that there might have been an infinite number of Big Bangs, and some Big Bangs survived. And they call it a Big Bang. I think people react to the name of it more so than anything, me included. But now thinking about it, it's just percolation, it's just bubbling. And really our universe is always bubbling and percolating. And so why not potentially think about this thing where we take the Big Bang idea and try and see that that's where mainstream dogma has led us to maybe deifying this theory to a point where there's no other alterations and it has to be as such. But in fact, if you just take the Big Bang as just one event in a cyclical process of percolation, creation, death, and on, then the Big Bang as a process becomes understandable and possible. And let's say we take the Big Bang and extend it omnidirectionally, then you have a nucleus and shells, so it's not just a conical bell-shaped expansion. The other thing is that we also know that bubbles not only expand but contract. Therefore, the universe is not an infinitely expanding universe. It may be an oscillating universe that expands and then contracts. And something like that might easily explain some of the bigger questions, I think. Especially since, imagine if we're talking about a hydrogen atom having a braided coaxial electric filament surrounded by sheaths, counter-rotating sheaths going through it. This is proven by quantum mechanics. And then when we look at Aurora Borealis on Earth, we have counter-rotating electrical sheaths outlining the Birkeland currents through Earth. So why not on a galactic scale? And why not on a universal scale? So the original Big Bang bubble may also have this structure and may itself be a plasmoid of the largest scale that we know of. So I think about it like that now, and I think it's to me, to some it may seem like half-stepping, but to me I think it's a little more reasonable to understand why people are so attached to ideas like the Big Bang or like string theory. And you come to realize that a lot of this stuff is from smart people, and they really want to know the same kind of things that I want to know. However, I think the specialization of it, where people are not generalist enough, means that they're stuck in their paths and they can't really see the forest for the trees, if I put it gently. So you get a lot of defending of specialization, and therefore people are not talking about how we might really unify relativity and quantum mechanics very simply by applying quantum mechanics, which can be tested in a laboratory, to the science of the cosmos, which in a way is already happening. But I think, again, if you look at the Big Bang inflation, cosmic oscillation instead of inflation, and Big Bang as an event among many, all of a sudden Big Bang can be a possibility. Does that make sense? What's going on, Fantasy Ecstasy? Our last Monday night Halloween for 11 years. It feels very special tonight. I feel very coherent in my thinking and attached to the moon and our crystal clear moon tonight. Good crowd. Hope you all are feeling good. What do you think about what I'm saying? Should I keep talking, or should we get back to the tunes here? I feel like maybe it's time for some Saturn. Shockwave says, I guess you're talking to downscale. So they're talking basically, downscale and Shockwave are talking about having a magnetic field. And, the way we think about fields is that electricity can induce a magnetic field. If you run a current through a magnet, you can produce an electric field. And I think words are being, the names of things are kind of swapped back and forth, but I feel like it's the one and the same idea. If things are powered from the outside, then things have an emergent field. The field is a co-creation of the wire and the ether around it. As the wire creates a bubble, it pushes outwards like an onion skin or like an apple flesh, and the center is always kind of coexisting within the field. So we live within the mind, not the mind within the skull. And I think that's why it's very difficult for some to really embrace that, because it's a huge upending of what people think is actually going on. But it makes a lot more sense. It actually answers things like telepathy, the idea of the morphic resonance field from Rupert Sheldrake, Eileen McCusick's human biofield, and also the ancients knew this, that humans lived inside a bubble. And they talked about this in Vedic philosophies and Hindu studies. It was the contrast of self and other being our field, not being an invisible metaphor. Let's see. Astralis said, how can I use my field better? What should I do? So I think maybe like Eileen McCusick tunes her field using tuning forks. I think recognizing the field is a big first step, is trying to understand, like a big question for me in my life was like, where do we store human memories? How do we store, the smell of something and the look of something and the memory of a person, all these different ideas. Where is that actually at the tips of neurons? Is it in the brain itself, inside the skull? And how do we store so much of it, and how do we access it? And if you look up studies, you'll see these scans where the brain lights up in different areas, but nobody can really find an actual memory. And people can't really, scientists and experiments can't find consciousness, the actual idea of consciousness, understanding self and reacting. And therefore, the idea of field makes a lot more sense, because then all of a sudden you have physical memory, like cloud storage, And then you have self being an antenna that taps into field, and therefore all the lightning spots on our brain that light up when you're doing these experiments end up being the connectors of the field. Then if you take that to a larger sense, fractally, you see that Earth lights up with lightning storms. Is that the Earth reacting with its field? And then the sun flares up. Is the sun reacting with its field? And I think it's very rational to assume so. So yeah, tuning your field. But I think it's also very important to note in terms of the Zen stuff is to not try too hard, because flow, when you push against flow, you try to control self via other or control other via self, you end up doing more harm than good. So I think one of the big Zen lessons I learned is to not try too hard to try too hard. It doesn't mean don't try, and it doesn't mean give up on everything. But it also doesn't mean like go crazy if you don't get things done, because you're already doing the great work by existing. It's the same as self-actualization or self-realization. People tend to think you have to do more than just exist. But we don't expect that of the Earth. We don't say the Earth needs a few more clouds to be perfect, and we don't say there needs to be less mountains for Earth to be perfect. So humans are already doing the great divine act by just simply existing as an experiential fractal of the greater whole. And I think that might be the reason that we don't have to worry too much about things, because ultimately not only are we the omnipotent creator, but also our life is eternal. Our experience is not. Maybe our individual, discrete, photonic lives are not eternal, but I think that in and of itself is a favor, so that we're not immortal, and we get to have so many different versions. So yeah, so that's a thought on fields. Dzerda says, I think of our past life memories as being stored in water. Well, water exists in phases, and most things are pretty much water because it's one of the simplest molecules that forms, different forms of water, different easy water, different ionized water, different states. And therefore the air around us is filled with water, and water can exist fractally at every scale, and therefore it wouldn't shockwave me if memories were stored in fractal cymatic knots of water in the atmosphere. The idea of just the Akashic record and the fact that DNA code or Mother Earth or passed down from generations, these are terms that sound good, but they don't really mean much in terms of physical reality. So people I personally have a tough time hearing things like genetic code was passed down. How? And who coded it? What code? This idea of DNA does this thing by itself. Or people don't say by itself, but people say DNA does this, as if somehow we are not also DNA, like one and the same. It's not like DNA is part of us and we're separate from DNA. DNA is us. Therefore, we are the actual literally the genetic code, and we are literally passing it down not only once, but all the time. So yeah. So let's get to Saturn here. And what song should we get to Saturn with? Maybe this one. All right, I think it's the done for the moon tonight, but that was a beautiful Luna. Let's get off to the planets.
I give you love and a common peace. The band's part of me. I know you think the band's his bodies, but I'm amazed by the words from the lips. I hear your name from a common peace. It's insane that you're part of me. Never lift from my iron wrists, it's as if everybody is the same buddy. Feel insane and I yearn for relief. Maybe one day you'll summon me. I am made of the will of somebody so deep, buddy. We'll get the slip. Here in space now we come in peace, seeing things that you cannot believe. Ready to trip on the drift if you live to the new. 'cause I love to give you. We are the space race, we are the moonwalk, we are the franchise, we are the sequel, we are the ether. How are we still here? We are place along the space race.
right, I can't help myself want to comment on just the Ken Wheeler stuff because, man, I've been following Ken for a lot of years. I hope I'm not peeking out on the audio, so let me know if the audio is too high or too low here. So just, yeah, so Ken, I noticed this because I was on Electric View with Shockwave before, and we chatted about Ken Wheeler, and I feel like I do have to defend some of his work because he can be a handful and can be difficult to listen to sometimes. But I feel like he really has a grasp on, I think he would like to say everything, but I don't know if that's true. I do, not maybe scientifically, but I think definitely culturally, he doesn't really, he has his own sort of value system. But I definitely think in terms of light, in terms of magnetism, in terms of Vedanta, in terms of the understanding of Tesla, Oliver Heaviside, Charles Proteus Steinmetz, James Clerk Maxwell, some of the original stuff, and he was on Thunderbolts Project early. I feel like Ken gets a bit of a rough shake for whatever reason, but I think it's worth saying that he's done quite a bit of great work as well, and he's really a unique mind. So yeah, I don't think he needs me to defend him, but I will anyway. So this is Theoria Apophysis channel. Anyway, he helped me a lot at a certain time when I needed somebody to say certain things. Light and magnetism, I mean, he uses the idea of centrifugal convergence and centripetal convergence and centrifugal divergence, which is really essentially the same thing as Donald Scott is talking about with, and Buddy Daugherty is talking about. I guess the issue that I have culturally with all these different channels that everybody's trying to say, my theory is right and no other theory is even close. Even, I'll give you an example, like Dissident Science, David D. Hilster, doesn't want to commit to anything. So he's very great about like exposing the idea of, hey, like, don't believe in dogma just because, think for yourself, which is awesome, and he does the work. But at the same time, when presented with ideas that are likely great ideas, he's very quick to just immediately ignore them and say, let's just add them to the pile and not decide on anything. And then, for example, like Pierre Marie Robitaille should comment on stellar metamorphosis. And then you should have somebody like Alexander Unzicker, who is doing his breakdowns of all the different people in physics. He should be talking to other people and also probably fixing his microphone, because it's very difficult. Like, he's saying such great stuff, but it's very hard to listen to him. Maybe I'm doing that with a distorted microphone too, so forgive me. That goes for Thunderbolts Project too. Don't put out videos that are almost the same type of stuff that we're working to break apart. You know, something that's so brazen as to say, like, this thing doesn't exist is just not the right attitude for science. Even if you fundamentally disagree with something, I feel like it's good to break it apart in a more gentle way, in a more logical way, because that's how you learn from mistakes, or if something is wrong. For example, like the Big Bang. I was saying this earlier. Why is somebody like me proposing 3 methods to elaborate on the Big Bang? And Thunderbolts Project is saying, that Big Bang never made any sense, don't listen to dogmatic academic science, universe is electric. So the nuance here is that yes, the universe is electric and fundamentally connected. That premise has been proven in a lot of different ways, but it doesn't absolutely disprove the concept of a Big Bang in all its iterations. It happens to maybe disprove the idea of a singular instance Big Bang, but not, like I said, a multi-tiered Big Bang, infinite universe, a primary mover of unified consciousness prior to a Big Bang being omnidirectional and atomic in its structure, and therefore easily, possibly a galactic Markland convection creating an original Big Bang. That is, what if that's the way things are? So to completely dismiss this idea, I don't know if it's correct. So I've gotten to this point where I really want to go in and be nuanced with all these different ideas and realize, like, why are people not coming to conclusions, and why are people not working together to actually resolve? You know, we think about resolution and resolving an image. Like right now we're resolving resolving an image of Saturn moment by moment. But then these channels go out and about and are, I don't want to say attacking one another, some are, but others are just not really thinking about it from a big picture standpoint. Even though, to be fair, there are a lot of videos on Thunderbolts Project where, like, Mel Atchison or Andy Hall or Michael Claridge do talk about the holistic idea of things and how all of this connects to consciousness. But it's few and far between when that happens. Typically, it's kind of, we don't want to become, I say that because I feel like I'm part of an electric universe kind of thing, but mostly because I think it's a great idea, and it answered a lot of my big questions years ago, and so I've been talking about it. But again, I don't want to be like the dogmatic systems and say, just because I think the universe is interconnected with filaments, therefore all these dogmatic academic theories are completely false and wrong. I just am feeling more and more like that's not the right approach here. So let's see. D. Zerta says, Shockwave, I called him out when he pushed the Russian guy in AU. Yeah, so an example of how, like, culturally I differ from Theoria Apophysis is those videos that, the Doomsday videos. And I just actually, for some reason, Suspicious Observers videos have started to come up again in my channel for some reason, in my feed. So Ben is doing his shorts talking about, you know, solar flares and how it's going to trigger stuff on Earth. And it's just like, I don't understand how people are living in that state of mind where just impending doom, and then also telling people on YouTube or anywhere that you somehow have a leg up on impending doom. And also, I'll see you at the end vibes. And I'm just like, it's just such low vibration for me. Although I will give credit where credit is due. Ben on Suspicious Observers is quite brilliant and has been doing all the work for a long time, was friends with Billy Elverton. So can't really completely decry or denounce Ben, but I just, for me, videos with emojis and September this date and that date, like somehow these channels know when the end of the world is coming. So far everybody's been wrong. And they will continue until somebody's right, in which case, like, really, are you watching YouTube at that point? It's like ridiculous. All right. I'm trying to pick out some comments here. I'm not sure if y'all are talking to me even, or you're talking to each other, but either way, it's fine. It's pretty animated, and usually is when Shockwave is in the room. What I do love doing sometimes is checking out some of these related channels that are doing live streams and lurking, and then you'll see Shockwave come in and throw down hard like he's doing right now. Love it. Shockwave, when are you making your own YouTube channel? Let's see, Cybersully says, so much is truly unknown and theoretically postulates that there's no room for considering as many perspectives as one can. But I don't know if it's, when you say truly unknown, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Truly kind of is an emphatic, is emphasizing this idea that it maybe can never be known. But I'm not sure. I think you can move along a trajectory of increased knowledge, right? You can go from a place of not knowing how to play a video game to knowing how to play a video game, or chess or backgammon, right? You don't start off knowing how to do it. You have to go through a lot of trials and tribulations to even play remotely well. And it gets, think about the difficulty level. The better you get, the longer it takes to improve. And you see that constantly with mastership. So I believe that kind of gradation of effort or energy spent is inversely proportional to yield. And the universe functions in this beautiful contrast of how much you put in, how much you get out. And then I feel like, oh, I see Gnostic Chef in the chat. Hello, beautiful people. What's going on, my friend? Welcome. A lot of expensive calories. Gosh, I'm missing so many contextual comments here, but what was going on? So, oh yeah, I was saying about understanding things. So I was saying there's this kind of, I guess, a presumption or it's usually typically it's almost a reaction, like a quick habitual reaction for smart people to engage one another and say, well, the premise is such that humans are really kind of very simple creatures and we are very flawed, and therefore there's really no way for us to grasp the bigger picture, so therefore don't try. Now, humans don't really say this exactly literally, but they imply it with this energy field of saying, you know what, like there are agencies and government officials and other scientisty people that figure this out, and I'm not one of those people. But you can't take the human experience away from a person, even if you put the responsibility in another's hands, because you still have a body and you have a field, and there's good reason to think that we made our own bodies, because right now somebody is growing your hair and pushing out skin cells and on and on and on, plus your body is filled with an entire ecosystem of all sorts of different sized bacteria and life. So we're a living entity, an organism kind of shuffling about this earth, and I would say that we have a huge role to play here, even if people want to create ad hoc explanations for what made us and what brought us here. It's more rational to me to imagine that we brought ourselves here for the reason of experiencing ourselves. So let's see. Trade. Cybercelly says, by truly I did not mean never being unknown, but I meant not having completely finalized theorem. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I didn't mean to be too nitpicky about it. I guess I was nitpicky about it. But I just mean it. There is a little bit of the habitual sense, at least generationally, where people kind of set themselves up for obstacles, where we say, well, why should I learn how to play this thing, because I probably won't be great at it. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. I think science has a lot of that. They're like, let's not get to a final theory yet because there's so much we still have to know. So for example, quickly would be quantum mechanics, having gotten to a very logical, rational, experimental place where we have superstring theory, superposition. We have all the answers to a fractally understood quantum reality. But then at the same time, we have mainstream cosmology and Big Bang, like standard Big Bang cosmology, special relativity, saying that because of certain things, we cannot merge the two sciences. And they almost make, the proverbial they, the media, the scientists, the journals, tend to make a thing of how magical it is and how cool science is because these two things cannot be brought together. But I feel like in a team, or when you're building software, you're building a game, or you're making a cake, at some point you have to bake the cake, right? At some point you have to merge quantum mechanics with the cosmos. And if you never do it, then who's going to do it, right? That's why I'm sitting here and with not a lot of what's going on, Hallow Arts. Funnily enough, when I was writing the title, I thought of your name for some reason, so glad you're here. Happy... Oh, damn, almost fell over. Shit. Excuse me. Okay. Just reading some of these comments here. Yeah, so we as humans have a fundamental say in what's going on. So we made our own bodies to have this experience the way... that's what I was talking about. I was talking about unifying quantum mechanics and special relativity. So maybe the math is not going to... Like, Alexander Unziker literally showed this de Broglie thing in his last video, where he shows how de Broglie wanted to merge the idea of energy being linked to mass and link it to wavelength. So oscillation. And this is what we're talking about. Life being an oscillatory frequency in the ether, either the original word of God or the hand of God created this original voice or echo or perturbation or reverberation. So Ken talks about it, right? It's sound echo. What was it? He quotes Tesla all the time, where he says life is sound vibrations in the field, in the ether. And this is where we're at. So if we look into ether and you look at what Unziker is talking about. He detailed it very adequately, or well, where he showed how Einstein was talking about the ether and had this idea of a medium by which things are transmitted and interaction. And when you look at his ultimate kind of his legacy, we somehow don't have an ether associated with special relativity. And this is really the secret here. This is how we could unify both these things from a very simplistic outsider sense. I'm no mathematician or physicist. It just seems very logical to me that things are fractal. This has been proven time and time again. Things are connected, proven time and time again. And quantum mechanics has all the math to show about complete interactions of an atomic structure and how it's built, how it reacts, how it moves, all the stuff. So why not apply it to a planetary or cosmological model as just an attempt to see if it can explain some of the things we see? And we would very quickly see that it would adhere to things like that. And the reason, some believe it's because gravity is the prevalent notion and we can't get past certain limitations of gravity. But scientists developed these new ideas like dark energy and dark gravity, but really they're alluding to pretty much the same thing, the contrast of field and luminous matter. Luminous matter is coalesced matter that is synthesized along root systems. These root systems experience this matter, or at least experience the field through layering this matter in Birkeland sheaths around the wires, if we're oversimplifying. But that's really the universe that we live in, and we're constantly creating recursions, echoes of the Big Bang everywhere along filaments. Like every single one of our hearts and our eyeballs and our nerve endings, all these little nodes are little stars, are little knots. And even I'll link this together with Pierre-Marie Robitaille. He talks about the lattice on the sun, and he shows this exact same thing, nested hexagons with nodes and wires connecting them, entangled tubes. So everybody's pretty much talking about the same, and Ken talks about the donuts the same way Buddy Daugherty talks about the hop vibrations and the nested donuts. And Dan Winter talks about it in his way with his spirals and his neg entropy versus entropy. It's all very logical. I think the issue here is that people want to be right somehow. They want to be the one that created the book. And, that's, I think, one of my problems, I think, with Ken is just the fact that he's so... he says he doesn't want the fame, but he clearly wants the fame. And I think his personality type kind of doesn't allow him to embrace the fame. But if he just embraced the fact that people love him and that he was a genius, then I think he would actually be a lot more chill than he really is. And somebody like Alexander Unziker, I feel like he's talked to Pierre-Marie Robitaille, but why not talk to other people too? He's clearly interested in this. He's doing a lot of work. So why not bring in other people and discuss what he presents his videos, variable speed of light, when he talks about it also fixes his microphone. All right, enough rambling here. I know that I'm just talking stream of consciousness stuff. This is a new track called Bougie Boogie. It's always been electrical.
Lives we live, innocence, I've known you forever. 7,000 lines are read, soul inside your bubble. Time races tonight, intervals divided, one ever lay as a time. Would you know the life we had, and still we live our love so bad. It was always electrical. It was always electrical. It was always electrical. It was always electrical. It's like a perception's guarded fractal harmonic diction, slowly giving rise to our carnival. We thought so far, a reservation guest stars. Never mind this old honeymoon, we can make some more. Make yourself some beautiful subtle energies. I told you once we never, you know this forever. There was always electrica. It 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 was always some lacking out. What mystery or love? In between the record, I found light had turned to dust. Rockets on the beach, oh, we knew just when to leave. I believe what's told, our story carries out. One breath so inspiring. Oh, it's nothing like it thought it though. There's nothing left to prove. All this love we find, falling into face with you. Long enough, but I'm gonna lose my mind. Cleared out the evidence, cover the shock this time. Like there's a fire. Say you to love for so long. Like my desert fire. Lights in the distance, I walk slowly up the stairs. See ahead a lion sit alone upon his bed. Oh, fractured beast, I know it's been so long. What time is it? Time is it? I know I will cast sight of it, so go on in form. Oh, sand is like the mind and scattered soul. Now let it go. Sigh like I'm reaching out. I left my home for 7 miles. We trail along for 7 lives. Let the whole heart sing. We're coming to shop this time. Like a desert fire. Say you loving for so long. Like a desert fire. Like a desert fire. Desert fire. Like a desert fire. Say you. All right. Old Desert Fire, new song from a couple of months. Been working on that one. So vibrations high. What is it? 12:11 a.m. November 1st, y'all. Rolled into it together.
tinkling of the controller. So Moon is set, Saturn is basically set, so we got some Jupiter in view, we got the Great Red Storm, and I'm going to scribble just a few things here because it's pertinent. It's not super duper sharp, but we can see enough to make out a little bit of the bands at the top, definitely the Great Red Storm. What's going on right now is Jupiter's pretty high up for me, so I think it's kind of getting a bit of weird light fringing from the top of my window, not windowsill, but the lid of my roof, the lip of my roof. Anyway, love the comments. Thanks, everybody. Astralis, I appreciate it. Shockwave says, Rupert Sheldrake is scratching the surface. I have to agree, as much as I tout Rupert Sheldrake and respect him so much, I feel like he kind of could go so much deeper, and also it would be great to hear his opinion on people like Eileen McCusick. I mean, he's been on Thunderbolts Project, but he never references them in his videos. He never talks about different theoreticians and linking them or being... Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how, however, morphic resonance, his experiments, really just indicate the fact that you're a bubble, an ant is a little bubble, an avocado is a bubble, this planet is a bubble, and we're all interconnected in that way. Fields are bubbles, just layered bubbles. And I said this yesterday, which is one of the ideas that I had recently about time being a negative bubble, or a space in between the bubbles. So time is basically, if we think about time in its essence, it's an interval. That's what we know as time. Time is an interval between events. So if we create a dipole moment or a magnetic moment in the particular frame of now, I would tell you this is the way I've started to understand it. Think about this idea of superposition, of taking your arm and looking at your arm and saying the next movement of my arm could be one of an infinite number of moves. And not just that, my arm will have changed by the time I made that move. And that's what quantum superposition really is. It's this idea that all states of possible potential reality exist on top of one another in a state of non-created world or consciousness. And then we experience it by doing the action. But it's both think-doing, so it's patterning. So we move our hands in accordance to our wiggle and oscillation, but it ends up basically collapsing a particular discrete packet of a movement. And that, as soon as you make that movement with your arm, it's encoded in your field. And your field now moves the old bubbles outwards and moves this new moment where you moved your arm into this next state, where you collapse the state. Now this bubble, between this bubble and the last bubble, that's a time bubble, or a time intervallic negative bubble. And I think if we think about every unit of energy, a hydrogen atom, a human, and a planet, and on, creating its own time, it's actually really interesting, because then you have this idea where a planet operates at a completely different time scale than humans. And an ant experiences its lifespan as a long life. But we experience an ant relativistically as having a very short lifespan. There's much more logic to it. So that's a couple of thoughts there. So yeah, what I want to scribble is counter-rotation on Jupiter. And this is something that encompasses a lot of things, like stellar metamorphosis, electric universe, electric stars, and Don Scott's model of counter-rotation, as well as Buddy Daugherty's Daugherty set. So let's just take Jupiter right here. We got the Great Red Storm. This is just what I see when I see Jupiter. So we have a coaxial electric filament, a braid, and it's twisting. And it could be that it's one surrounded by a bunch of smaller ones, smaller filaments that are also braided filaments. And so looking at it from the top, it's a big filament in the middle, a coaxial twisted filament like that. And then around it, you have little ones in an arrangement. And what's going on is that around this you have counter-rotation. Right. So what's going on here? These filaments are electrical filaments or strings or Lichtenberg, or references to Lichtenberg patterns, wiggles, magnetic ropes, all the different words for the same idea of a visible waveform of sorts, but actually it's much more erratic than that because it's interacting with things. So this is the sheath. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. The Birkeland current is really current as flow, right? So Birkeland current, I think, might even be a misnomer, or not a misnomer, but maybe I'm even using it too loosely because current really should be related to flow. So Birkeland currents are really currents that go this way and currents that go this way. Counter rotation is the energy that's going this way, and what happens sometimes is that this energy is actually outlined by dust and matter. Matter coalesces along filaments. But what these sheaths are here, this is the important part. This hypotrochoid, or hourglass shape, is also a pinched tube. So it's a cylinder, and at the center of where the pinch happens, you have a plasmoid. I guess that's off screen. Yeah. Let me know what you're thinking about what I'm drawing here too, so I can answer some questions. But anyway, this is our wormhole, or quantum tunnel, or microtubule. It's also the core of an apple shape, and then what it is, it's also the counter space of a donut. So let me get rid of all these scribbles real quick, and we'll just get back to this. But what we do see, and I could probably take footage of this over time. If we did 3 hours of Jupiter, you would see that each band is one band is going this way, band's going that way, band is going this way, band's going that way. If we had a huge telescope, you'd see aurora going that way, counter-rotating rings of aurora. So this is what's going on. Jupiter has a fuzzy core right now, according to mainstream science, and people say it's a liquid metallic hydrogen core. And people say, what's a gas? Not a gas, liquid, it's a metal. So liquid metallic hydrogen is basically just a denser material than we have at the outside, which is methane, hydrogen, and helium. And then as you get deeper to the core, what's happening is that at the core, there's a massive plasmoid, and it's gravitationally collapsing matter to the center. The same way stars are formed, and the same way things exist. Basically, we as individuals are basically a giant wormhole with a mouth, and everything in between, and we process information and expunge information. But we have 7 chakra rings and then 2 rings up at the top. So we're basically a chain of planets or stars, creating a giant wormhole of a human being, or creatures, not just humans. Creatures are also wormholes. So what happens with a model like this is we get an answer to almost everything at once. If we add stellar metamorphosis, then we realize that Jupiter's comes from an original star, and Jupiter's on its way to being something. That's one thing. Then we understand counter-rotation of the bands of Jupiter. Why is there counter-rotation? Because there's a coaxial Birkeland current, or if we want to visualize what it really is, it's a filament, and these filaments produce counter-rotation. The way we can prove that is you can see the aurora on Earth creates green counter-rotating, sometimes hexagonal counter-rotation, but really this is what can prove it, is that there's electric discharge funneling in and out of the poles of the Earth, and now we have proof that it happens on Jupiter, and therefore you have counter-rotation on Jupiter. But then if you take videos of the bands of Jupiter, you'll also see that there's counter-rotation. Why is there counter-rotation? Another way you can prove counter-rotation, I'm getting super nerdy here, but I'm going to try and pack all this information in here, but to prove counter-rotation on Jupiter without taking a video is to just look at the laminar flows, the shearing between the different rings, which is basically if something's going this way and something's going that way, the kind of flows start looking like smoke spirals and oceanic turbulent currents. So we know there's counter-rotation on Jupiter. So this is how I imagine I can look at it. So what happens is that Jupiter is really a cylinder, is counter-rotating rings that are pinched off at the ends. So it's really a cylinder and counter-rotating rings, and all the matter on Jupiter is really outlining these rings. But then what happens is, because we're in space, cylinders get snapped off and create spheres. I'm drawing this quite poorly because my tracking is atrocious right now. But really, I think these are the 2 or 3 fundamental things. So we have mainstream science calling the core fuzzy, but really it's saying that there isn't a liquid metallic, an iron-nickel core that is generating magnetic field, which is what is mainstream understanding of why magnetic fields are created. But really, the electric field, or the giant magnetic field of Jupiter, which extends far out beyond, like, I think it even touches Earth's magnetic field, second only to the sun. And this field is created because there's an electrical current flowing through Jupiter, and Jupiter is part of the electric circuit of the solar system. And because there's current flowing through it, we have counter-rotating aurora, and we have counter-rotating rings of gas and dust, and ultimately gaseous plasma, ultimately liquid metallic hydrogen at the core. And then also Jupiter looks more complex than our sun. So there's a lot of information. I could just keep going with this type of stuff, but if you imagine when you're watching something mainstream about Jupiter right now, they're not addressing any of the stuff really that I'm talking about. They allude to it, but they'll never tell you any, they'll neither confirm nor deny any of the stuff that I'm saying. So now I'm looking back at the chat, just want to see if any of that made sense. The other thing that's cool is that potentially the Great Red Storm is another Birkeland current, or a filament, going through it at a right angle. So every planet, I guess, like Saturn has a spot like this, Uranus and Neptune have spots like this on their, they have bands, and they have cylinder, like, because basically what conical or cylindrical shapes are tornadoes from the side. Right? You have vortices. So tornado from the side is counter-rotating currents, but they outline a Birkeland current. That's why these filaments are moving across the surface. And we're Birkeland Birkeland currents, again, I need to start changing this language, but electrical filaments surrounded by sheaths of plasma, really is how we should define it, or coaxial electrical filaments. Because a filament in a light bulb is that little wire that connects the two things. So it's really more of a filament. So braided filaments are humans along the surface of Earth. The same way our hairs grow along the surface of our skin. So what else can we garner from this? So something recently that I was talking about is we have this funnel shape, which are essentially the outline of the sheath of a electrical filament, coaxial electrical filament. This shape could be, maybe I'm wrong, but could be what they were talking about with an Einstein-Rosen bridge. Basically a discrete section of so right now these currents extend out into space, these filaments, extend out into space, right? And what happens is, let me bring back Jupiter. Gosh. Come on, tracking, work with me tonight. So Jupiter is grown by Markland convection. These wires crossed with an oscillation and created a huge star with spin. The spin, the original spin, is not necessarily from the larger protoplanetary disk from an accretion model necessarily, but actually because the filaments along which Jupiter was grown already had coaxial twisting and counter-rotation, and therefore when matter gravitationally collapsed to create a star, then Jupiter, this is why things coalesce to a center. This is what the cores of planets are and stars, and the core of Earth. And then the idea of a hollow moon is that the moon itself is the core, and therefore inside a core, a dead core, it's kind of hollow, right? That's why maybe Mars rang out and the moon rang out, and Mercury is basically the remnants of the inside of the original plasmoid once all the matter has been calcified and rotted away. So one thing I wanted to point out here is the idea of wormholes potentially being represented by the plasma sheaths. And then counter-rotation. But then further than that, let's talk about what a black hole and a white hole may be, which are essentially discrete representations of the mouths of this funnel. So, and if you remember what I said earlier about the Big Bang, if you look up the image of the Big Bang, looks just like this. It starts with this point, and you get the different layers of the galaxies and quasars and stars and planets. And you see that it's very intense over here, and then the universe apparently expands out this way. But if you realize that this plasmoid creates a symmetrical or omnidirectional flow, then the Big Bang event is now a nucleus with a shell. And a planet is a nucleus with a shell, and a human is a string of nuclei with their shells. And then collectively, because we're completely connected and inherently, these shells, like a series of 9 stars in a row, can become conscious the way we are. So we can learn a ton from Jupiter. All right, let's read the chat here. Let's get back to some tunes. I see a lot of people sticking around for that. That was a long rant, but I've been wanting to talk about this. This is Jeffrey Walensky, Stellar Metamorphosis. It's Don Scott Electric Star Counter-Rotation Model. It's also looking at the actual data because we have pictures of aurora, we have counter-rotating rings on Jupiter, and there's no official explanation for how Jupiter was formed. And so why not talk about it in a new way and think about these ideas? All right, throw me some comments about this. I know that everybody's talking about some other things, but let me know what you think. I'll get some tunes going. About to wrap it up here. I'm getting hungry, got time for a midnight snack. Appreciate sharing Halloween with y'all. The Hallow Moon. I should probably play the Hallow Moon, but now we're on Jupiter, so I don't know. Maybe I should not play that. I'll leave it for next time. How about something else? How about this one called Not So Far?
Train, it's 9 o'clock. Deep down, I thought you were so indestructible, with perfect beauty underneath. I was driven to slightly smile and lie by your feet. Instability is rocking, instability, zipping up interchangeably, iteration upon iteration. I saw you past the shadow, it was 12 o'clock. Oh, baby, I don't know, but maybe we could steal a show. hope you're there when I come around. With your fine eyes and coffee sweaters, with your perfect shade like a golden model. There's a whole new world when you come around. Another life we got all together. In another life we got all together. Memories of you, always gonna run in line, dawn, starlight, kind, moonlight, shrine, or right side, or light tone, privileged ships in night's crown, fire like trees, chill like smoke, sign a home inside shell. Where are you? I've been here so it's all a spiral. All I know is everything we think about is gold. Electric soul. Every life you come along, locking right in. Oh, every night it comes about, knocking right in. Oh, every life you come along, we'll fit right in. What you say to life completed, don't you sound conceited. It's all a spiral. All I know is everything we think about is located. I know I sound
All right, y'all. So just gonna hop in here for a couple more minutes. Let me know if you have any thoughts to close out the night. 12:37 a.m. ending it on Jupes. I feel like I said a good amount about Jupiter, but really it's very important to understand our planets and our moon and our sky just a little bit, and also not completely rely on agencies and media to tell you about Jupiter and Saturn. That's what I'm here for, at least a little bit. Yeah, Minefields is a great song by Toto. I think, right? It is by Toto. I gotta listen to that. I'm trying to remember what it sounds like. I was just talking about Toto. Jello, you always say things though synchronistically, or think things synchronistically. Alright, so whoever's catching this tomorrow, hope you have a wonderful day. I appreciate everyone who hung out tonight and listened to me ramble on about some plasma and about unifying some ideas, and also having some awareness about even alternative ideas and not just embracing anything because it's alternative and that's just overly simplistic. I think we gotta be a little bit more nuanced. Got to see Luna in ultra crisp detail if you missed it. Also Saturn and Jupes. I feel like Saturn and Jupes are, actually Jupiter, I gotta say, has been getting better over the last few minutes, or last 10 minutes or so. So sticking here another maybe 5-10 minutes or so, maybe 2 more songs or 1 more song. As soon as I say this, I'm only going to play 1 more song, so I'm going to do that, and I'll pick Dreamboat, because that's got a solo in it, and it's a good climax to the show. Alright, returning this rocket to landing, everybody. I'm not going to do roll call in case I miss anybody, but I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a wonderful and blessed Hallow early morning or morning after. It's already November. It's crazy. This year is done in the bag. All right, y'all. This is your captain signing off. I will see you tomorrow or the day after for another moon session. Leave me some comments, please. Last video, everyone left me a like, but no comments. Likes are nice, but comments are better. Even comments that you may think I disagree with you on, I read everything, and sometimes it takes me forever to respond, but I do think about it, so I appreciate comments very much. Let's do it. Good night, y'all. Catch you soon.